You will forgive us for being late 12 minutes, but we had to it. Now, before we begin with this modest and informal effort to share here and there a few scattered impressions with you, I have been asked by the officers to bring to your attention the following very brief announcement. The formal dedication of the Abe and Anna R. Foster Memorial Library, the refurbished Bet HaMidrash, the Charles Yaffe Oran HaKodesh, and our new administrative center will be held on the night of Slichos, Saturday night, September the 18th. This brief dedication will be followed by Shari Torah's annual Pre-Slichos Symposium on what some of us believe to be a timely and an urgent theme. The theme for the Slichos of this coming September is The Vanishing American Jew, Myth or Reality. The distinguished panel includes Rabbi Morris A. Landis, the Rabbi of Adas Yeshurun Congregation, Mrs. Esther Marine, a graduate student and research fellow in sociology, and our own Dr. Kurt Schreiber, Dean at Duquesne University. This will be held here in this same hall on the night of Slichos. Also, I didn't say anything as yet, and I'm already thirsty. Also, high holiday services at the Shari Torah will be held upstairs in the main synagogue, and in this unusually comfortable Horlick hall with the air conditioning. And Chazan Lefkowitz will be accompanied by a choir of 10 voices trained by him. Now, these are our brief announcements. When I was in the Beis HaMedrash some moments ago, I could not help but reminisce how some 14 months ago, when I came back from my first pilgrimage to the land of Lenin and Stalin, and all preparations were made to speak here in this hall, some of our officers came in and they said, Rabbi, would you permit us to transfer ourselves upstairs to the main synagogue? And when I sat in this medrash today, I was thinking that once again officers will come in this medrash. But instead they will say, Rabbi, would you mind if we change it from this large Horlick hall to the Bet HaMidrash? However, they did not show up. And now I understand the reason. Now, dear friends, I felt that my first oral report to any audience in the United States of this eventful and internationally publicized event or experience should be held in Pittsburgh. I owe Shari Torah very much, and I owe Pittsburgh jury very much, because after a tormented childhood in Soviet Russia, and after through building student days in New York, by the grace of God, I have found a little base from which I could, to some extent, see the realization of some of my youthful dreams and some of my youthful hopes. And I, for one, felt that this would be the smallest way, perhaps a very modest outward expression of infinite inward appreciation, that the very first report should be given right here at the Shari Torah and in Pittsburgh. Now, when all of the attention which our visit evoked throughout the world, when we were thinking about it, I could not help but reflect upon the great tragedy which is involved here in as far as the second largest Jewish community in the world is concerned, Russian Jewry. After all, the announcement was made of some modest, some limited promises by the government. These promises were three. Number one, the reopening of the yeshiva in Moscow, with residence permission for 20 students outside of Moscow and some 15 from Moscow to study in the yeshiva after the Sukkot holidays this coming year. The unlimited baking of matzah in Moscow, I must repeat, not for all of Russia. Moscow, Leningrad, Kiev, but not for all of Russia as yet. And the third one, the publication of 10,000 Sidurim for a Jewish community of 3 million. Now, you know yourself how many Sidurim are being used in synagogues in Pittsburgh alone, of some 50 or 60,000 Jews came yearly. And when I thought, why is it that this story made such headlines all over, and especially the speeches in the Moscow synagogue? Here is the Jewish Chronicle from England, the most reputable, the most prestigious English Jewish publication in the world. And here the lead story: Moscow Jews hear USA rabbis weep and applaud during the services. And of course the same was done in Israel, in France, in England. Here are some Israeli newspapers. And this by itself shows the tragic plight of our brethren. If something of a very modest, of a very little, of a very limited nature was promised or done, already headlines throughout the world. And this reminds me of the Pasuk in Tehillim, Hakshivo el rinosi hidaleisi me'eis. By the songs and the praise and the jubilations which a person expresses, and by the things for which he is grateful to others, you can understand his own condition. When a person is starved for many, many days, and someone offers to him a little bit of water, a morsel of food, he'll go out of the way to be grateful. And by the way he expresses his gratefulness in a way we can measure, and we can assess his suffering and his deprivation. The very fact that these few events, which I do not consider as colossal, I consider them perhaps with more seasoned and more competent observers of the Jewish scene in Russia as historic. But by no means will I or my colleagues tell American Jews or the world Jewish community that everything is solved. There are many other problems under discussion with the Soviet government, even during these weeks as we have returned back here to Pittsburgh, or my colleagues to their own communities. But the very fact that such things could have evoked so much elation and so much enthusiasm and so much interest shows the analogy of somebody coming out of the hospital room of a very critically afflicted patient, and the family and the relatives and good friends are around, and silence in the hush, they run over. What happened? How is the pulse? What does the doctor say? And this is exactly, in my own thinking, what has happened here with our visit, the visit of the Rabbinical Council of America delegation. So our isolated, and I underscore tormented, I underscore discriminated Jews of the Soviet Union. Now I feel that you have come here not for evaluation, but you wanted to hear more about the story, what has really happened here. Some of you know, especially those who read Jewish newspapers and periodicals, or those who heard me here in Pittsburgh or in other communities, that ever since I have returned from Soviet Russia in May 1964, some 14 months ago, I have advocated direct confrontation with the Soviet authorities. I have pleaded for tactful petition in the spirit of respect for a great power in this world. I, for one, refuse to ignore, even for a moment, the international polarity which exists in this decade and which most likely will continue to exist for decades to come. And we also felt there should be intercession on behalf of our brethren, but it should be very cautious, it should be prudent, and it should be very balanced. After all, when we indulge in overzealous demonstrations and in reckless name-calling, and even in the excess of comparing Soviet Russia to the beast of Nazi Germany, I believe we are guilty of exaggeration. And here is a statement in front of me here from one of our leaders in America. I will not name him, but I like to read to you what he said in the Congress of the United States, and he and his followers would still expect Russian commissars and the Russian government to be sympathetic and to be friendly or warm towards Jewish requests from abroad. Among others, this leader said, only in a sense, in terms of ultimate purpose, may it be said that the policies of Hitlerism and the Soviet government toward Jews are all alike. Both have sought the elimination of the Jewish presence in history. And he continues, both have sought to remove Jews as a distinctive entity among the diversity of mankind. Both have sought in our lifetime to bring a close and long Jewish experience and the stream of Jewish religious and cultural expression to its end. I believe that this is slightly exaggerated. This is not the case in Soviet Russia, as I will try to tell you a little bit later as we shall develop the theme. So, among those efforts were to organize a delegation which would come to the Kremlin, come to Moscow, come to Russian Jewry, and speak in the accent of religion, not in the accent of the Cold War, which of course we deplore, not in the accent of any international conflict in Southeast Asia, but only to speak in the accent of religion. Now, who else in the world is more qualified to speak in the accent of religion than students of religion? The Rabbinical Council of America constitutes close to 1,000 traditionally ordained, 90% American trained Orthodox rabbis. And out of this prestigious and largest organization of rabbis in the world, a delegation was formed months ago. But it was a well-kept secret. As some people will tell you in Pittsburgh, there wasn't even an announcement prior to my leaving Pittsburgh that I would go. I did not permit anything to be published about it. We felt that nothing in the printed word should appear about it. And then, of course, a difficulty has developed unexpectedly. The difficulty was that the Soviet authorities refused us visa. And when they refused us visa, the mothers and the wives of some of us were very happy. And they even offered a kiddush in their respective synagogues, as my own beloved mother did in Philadelphia. She was very happy that it was refused. Until the Friday before the Sunday, when we were scheduled to depart, there were no visas and no permits from the government. They gave us various excuses, which I don't care to repeat at this moment. They were not so logical, and we felt that we should pursue our request. And finally, out of Moscow comes a cable, Friday afternoon, July the 16th, that you will be welcome guests in the Soviet Union. And immediately our delegation was informed by long distance. Everyone was told to pack, and Shiva Osor B'Tammuz, on a day of fasting, to appear at the Kennedy Airport. We are leaving for France about 7 o'clock in the evening. When we came Sunday, and we were tired, after all, it was a very long fast day, and it was rather hot and humid in New York. We came to the Kennedy Airport. A number of rabbis from various parts of New York and the suburban areas came to see us off. And it is difficult for me to tell you what I was thinking of at this moment. I, for one, not speaking on behalf of my esteemed colleagues, I was thinking, is it wise? Is it prudent for one who for the last year was writing and speaking about this problem throughout the United States and in foreign countries, whether it is wise for me to accept the invitation and to be part of this mission? Perhaps I would be a liability instead of an asset. And then, something happened in Hashemayim. From the embassy of a certain government, a person was sent to me, and he said, I'll make it easier for you to go in Moscow. And he pulled out a publication which appeared in Moscow only 2 weeks before, and there our good friend Vergelis, the Kaddish Zogel and the apologist for the government, writes that one of the delegations who will be here is really not an enemy of ours. Although he criticized us very sharply, but he never participated in any protest demonstration against us as far as we know. And he mentions my name, and he gives me a Mishabera even before I came to Moscow. That, of course, made me feel a little bit better, but at the same time uneasy. To me, a compliment from Vergelis is not of tremendous value for obvious reasons. Our plane was about 2 hours late because of the storm in New York. And as we set out, our men, I had seen my colleagues in various moments. I was brought up with some of them in the classrooms of Yeshiva University. I had shared with them the platform, speaking together, working with them in various efforts, conventions, but never before have I seen such serious, such stern and almost frightened faces. Everyone took to his safer in the airplane. Then everyone was scribbling notes and thinking, what are we going to do? What are we going to ask for? And the entire behavior in such a delicate problem. In fact, we were tormented by something else. God knows whether it is wise to do it. After all, I ask you, how would the United States of America, you and I, react if a group of communists from Leningrad would come to Pittsburgh to plead with us about better housing for a certain ethnic group in the Hill District? How would we react about it? We would not be so comfortable, and we would not be so elated about it, and this is quite natural. There are some people who refuse to see and to understand the Russian position in this problem, and we felt it had to be included in our plans and in our deliberations. Next morning we arrived in Paris, and if I would be Mark Chagall, not exactly in his nusach, I would tell you how we looked, 10 of us. We got a young boy with Talaitim and with Tefillin on Orly Airport, davening with a minyan. And here people are running, catching this plane and another plane. You know what goes on in Europe now with the traveling. And here 10 Batlonim out of Mars with talis and tefillin, with long bullet and Talaitim and Sidurim, have the chutzpah to get up in that beautiful Orly airfield und ich habe wegstellen sagen a Gdushe, Punkt im Doktor Bisharet Eire. And somewhat symbolically, the noise of the jet interfered. And I was thinking it is an unequal match, our Mizmer Shir Chanukah to the noise of the 4-engine jet. And then I felt that all of life, all of Jewish life and Jewish history and destiny is an uneven match. The little one, the small one, the fragile, the powerless against the giant. It's a history of a David confronting a Goliath in various centuries and on various continents. So we davened, we concluded, and then we were told that our plane is about to leave Paris. We had several hours there, and we met with certain people whose opinion we considered very important, religious leadership, and the head of the Jewish community of Paris, of France, that came to see us. And of course, we listened attentively to some of their recommendations and their guidance. We entered our plane about 1 o'clock. In fact, 2 Pittsburgh girls met me at the airport as I was buying a postcard, and they were on the way to Israel. And I said to them, we are on the way to Soviet Russia, and you should have seen the expression on the faces of those wonderful 2 youngsters from our city. So we took the plane, and our plane stopped in Hamburg, and I don't have to tell you what our reaction was when we came off for an hour and a half on this blood-drenched territory with Jewish blood. And then we came to wonderful Amsterdam, those wonderful people of Holland. And as we came up there on the airport, we could not help but feel gratitude and some elation. A people who have shown a consistent standard of civilization and decency in as far as the tragedy of our people were concerned. And finally we came to Helsinki, to Finland. And here again we saw some kind of a wonder of our own international community. Here a republic with hardly 4 million people at the border of the mighty, the huge, the multilingual and multiracial Soviet Russia, preserving its independence, its political system, its sovereignty, its tradition, with a degree of pride and even without much fear. In Helsinki, we had to daven mincha, and the people were very nice. They gave us a room which has been kept there for the personnel of the airport. And here, with the moment it was announced that we are about to enter the Russian plane, the Samolyot or the Aeroflot. I cannot tell you what happened. I could understand, I who was born in Soviet Russia, I who knows something what can happen to people there, and one who was there only 14 months ago, how our faith changed instantly. But when I looked at those American-born, very proud and happy young men who were part of the delegation, and they too changed their color. As soon as we got into this plane, the entire mood changed. And as we came into the plane, we sat near a larger group of Jewish merchants. They were coming from Paris and from London, from Belgium to buy furs. In fact, when we came to Leningrad, the Astoria Hotel, one of the finest, was occupied by more than 500 Jewish merchants who came from Belgium and England and France. This is terribly important for us to know, and this is why I'm giving you those facts. They came to buy furs in Russia, and of course in the city of Leningrad. Well, you could see right away that these were comfortable, free, affluent people. They are dressed and their mode of speech has shown this. But as we sat in the Aeroflot, we realized that Shmirat Haloshon, watchfulness of your words and your tongue, begins right here at this place. When we came in Leningrad, it was late. However, as some of you know, Leningrad has those majestic Bielye Nochi. It does not get dark, and it is almost at daytime. We were met by an agent of the government and by the tourist agent. The reception was very warm and very cordial. Immediately we were taken, all of us, to a special room for custom inspection. And here, as they brought us to the room, I was the spokesman by virtue of language of the group. The commissar turns to me and he says, "Do you have any Talmuds with you?" I said to him, "This is just like you would ask me, do I have the Encyclopedia Promyshlenosti Technica or Britannica?" I said to him, "This constitutes so many volumes, it's impossible to carry such a thing in a chamedan which we have here." However, I said to him, each one of us has one book of this Talmudic encyclopedia. For some or other reason, he did not ask whether we had other religious books. However, when I told him this, and I told him what else our group has, Tallis, Phil, and others, he turned to me and he says, "Tell your colleagues that they are making a promise here that none of these articles will be given to anyone in our country. They will be taken back together with you." And of course, I said to him, "There's no question about it. We are your guests, and you can rest assured that this will be done as you expect us to do." We were brought to our hotel, the Oktyabrskaya, and of course, after a difficult day of traveling, each one of us were assigned to their room, and this can be said openly. Many of the rooms for certain people who visit Soviet Russia are completely taped. And not only the rooms, but also the taxi in which you ride and the bus in which you are taken, even by the tourists. And our men knew all of those things, and they tried to abide by it. I don't have to tell you how valuable it is when some kind of a tourist brings with him a Bible translated into Russian. This is at premium in Leningrad, in Moscow, any place. And in New York, many copies have been published of it this year with a Russian translation. And you cannot imagine the elation and the appreciation when such a Bible with a Russian translation is given to people who want it, especially those whom you meet in the synagogue. Now it begins the old story. We came into the synagogue in the morning, this was Tuesday morning, and I do want to say that when we were met at a plane by the tourist agent, some of us recognized him right away to be one of our own, a Jewish person. And I must say, in all fairness, although Michael is a dedicated communist, very loyal to the government, he has shown such understanding and such kindness and such politeness to us, something which we will not forget. In fact, when we had to part with him, we were so moved by everything he did, and I'll tell you later on what else he did, in a legal way, of course, nothing to break the law. And we made a collection amongst ourselves of 25 rubles. And I came over in the bus as we're about to part, and I said to him in Russian, Michael, this is a little expression of our gratitude. You do not tip in Russia anyone. And he said, no, I thank you. I cannot accept this. But I like so much Malamud and Philip Roth and Salinger and some of the other bestsellers in America. If you people will send me some of those books, I will accept it, and I will be very grateful to you. Of course, we took his address with us, and some of it is already on the way to this wonderful Michael, who made our stay in Russia so useful and, in a way, perhaps comfortable too. Now, as soon as you meet people in Leningrad or in Moscow, in Kiev or in Tbilisi, you should know there are two groups of people, especially in a synagogue. And you hear two different stories. When you go into any synagogue, unfortunately, now more than before, because now we went with some 18 eyes, there are informers, there are Muslims, they are agents of the government. And when you talk to those agents, they tell you a terrific story of a Gan Eden in Russia. You feel as if you're about to liquidate everything in the United States and come immediately to settle in Leningrad or in Tbilisi. This is the story which they give you. But then there is the story of the 98%. The gloomy story, the tragic story, and especially all of us, we try to compare notes. Of course, the official report of RCA will be given to the Jewish community several weeks later. It is being formulated now. All of us agree that above everything else, we have noticed constantly, and this was constantly and consistently, fear. Everyone is afraid. They begin to talk to you even about the weather. To an American, he will look around in all sides whether somebody is there, because somebody may misconstrue that when you spoke about the climate is too hot, he may say, that is too schlecht, or something else. Even the ordinary, the social amenities, all of these, you are afraid to utter to a foreigner, because you may be taken as a spy. And this is a klole, a terrible curse. You'll find it in the Teicheche. When the Torah speaks of a certain tragic, helpless situation in Jewish life, which will reach unbearable, intolerable extremities, it says you will be afraid. You will fear the man next to you. And this klala, this curse, unfortunately, has fallen upon the shoulders of 3 million Jews. They are afraid, no matter who you are. They can see you as a rabbi from America, and they understand that those people came for their own good, to intercede and to plead and to try to achieve something, but they are afraid. And of course, I don't have to tell you what this fear does. There are three things which undermine the health and the spiritual equanimity of an individual, the rabbis tell us. And this is pachas, fear is the first one, derech. There's something else which undermines the Jew in Russia, derech. He's accused of not being rooted sufficiently and honestly in the society of Soviet Russia. He's cosmopolitan. He is more susceptible than the other ethnic groups to subversive activities, because he has a relative in Brooklyn and a brother in Tel Aviv, and because he has a state of Israel. So they say he is baderech. He is constantly ready to pick up his valise and to move. And then there's a third one, the obo. When it comes to accusing anyone for certain crimes although the Jew is only 1.5% of the Russian population, they constitute 62% of those who are accused even in the newspapers, even today. 1.5%, but 62% as far as being accused by the Russian government. So they have this glory of Pachad and Derech and Ovoy. Now, some of these people, we were interested to find out what has the retirement, to be polite, I'm speaking now like a Muscovite, what the retirement of Khrushchev did for Russia. And we heard quite a few opinions. Some of them said that Khrushchev was an anti-Semite. Khrushchev was brought up in that part of Russian territory which was guilty of most vicious and bloody anti-Semitic outbursts during the Tsar, and especially the Civil War following the revolution, and they feel that there is a climate of relaxation, a little bit of a thaw. You are not as afraid. They feel, some of them, that the change has been almost as great as from Stalin to Khrushchev now. Others, we must tell you frankly, deny it. And they say that although Kosygin and Berezhnyov are sophisticated intellectuals and very brilliant craftsmen in as far as leading the government, but still and all they are not too much concerned about these problems of the ethnic groups, because a government which has to buy from Canada some 500 million bushels of wheat cannot worry about other problems. A government where the executive walks in Moscow or in Leningrad from his office about 5 o'clock as we have seen it, and there he has his briefcase and his Pravda under one arm, and there he sees an ocheret, a line. And whoever in Russia sees an ocheret, he runs to be the next. It may be tomatoes, it may be potatoes, it may be a kilogram of butter, or it may be some vegetables, other vegetables or milk which came in. And these are not stories. So as you pass by Leninski Prospect or Gorky Street or any of these, lines 15, 20, 30, and sometimes more people. And the sophisticated executive of government, in one hand he carries the Izvestia, in the other one Shemtel Zechnit. In a most modest package, he carries 5 kilograms of potatoes, a present to his wife for dinner. Now this is something which is still happening at this very day, when they have done such great wonders with space. In Moscow in the morning they give us coffee and it was black. So my colleague said to me, can't you get some milk for us? So I said to the waiter, "Пожалуйста, холодное молоко, we would like to have cold milk." So I see she goes to the head waiter. Comes to the head waiter und sieht so eine Konferenz, sie will gedacht, da runterwerfen eine atomische Bombe dort hinein. And she talks and there's short conversation, and I see the head waiter goes to the commissar of the kitchen. He comes back to the commissar alone and he apologizes. And he wasn't ashamed. I love this Russian innocence. And he says to me, this is a very hot day today in Moscow. It was not as hot as here today, I assure you. And he said the milk got sour all the way from the dairy to the hotel. I could not contain myself, and I knew I may go to Siberia any moment. I said, a country which can make a Sputnik cannot bring safely the milk to this dining room, it shouldn't get sour. He became red and white, and of course I immediately got my release from the Foreign Service of the United States. Now, these are things which you see in the Soviet Union today. But let us go on with our own problems. So there are some who say that conditions have improved and some not. We have decided as soon as we came into Russia that we are going to do everything and anything to be in touch, especially with young Jews. We wanted to speak to those who are second and third generation revolution children. So I was on the way with 2 of my colleagues to find the sister of one of the venerated Roshei HaYeshiva of Yeshiva University. I gave them a promise in New York before I left that I will see her. We did not see her a long time. I had the address, and I asked 2 other men to go with me, and there were obvious reasons for my not going alone in any place in Soviet Russia, especially on this street. I was advised to do so. So as we walked, I asked somebody, I showed him the address and the number. Oh, he said, it isn't far, you will just walk 2 blocks. Wir gehen noch 2 blocks lang wieder Changoles und wir finster in the Gegend. And we think here it is. Wir gehen mal gucken, they say another 2 blocks. So I was somewhat worried. We had to be somewhere else. We had a very important appointment with one of the commissars. So not looking at a person, I see a person passes by, and I just give him the notes like this, and I say, how can I find this house? I don't look at him. I was absorbed in the address. In Hibakuk, a young man stands near me, handsome, dark, and he looks at us, and then he looks all around. Yevrei? He says to me, you are Jews? The Yevrei? He says, yeah, Toje Yevrei. And I laugh. I am also a Jew. I say, so I said to him, what do you do? So he says during the day he studies, late in the afternoon he works in a bakery. And then I said to him, how old are you? He said, 24. Do your parents go to synagogue? Sometimes do you have any Jewish book in your home? He says, no, we don't have it. I said, tell me truthfully. You tell me you are a Jew. How is it here? How are you being treated? And this was a 24-year-old Jew in the street of Leningrad. He said, you cannot imagine how much discrimination and abuse my friends and I have to suffer in school and in the place where we work because of anti-Semitism and anti-Semitic remarks. Wait, this isn't over. I said to him, do you ever go to a synagogue? Did you see a synagogue with your own eyes? He says, yes. Once a year, many of my friends and I, we come Simchat Torah, Simchat Torah in front of the synagogue. And by the way, we had irrefutable evidence, and this is not a guzman. We made it our business to find it out. Over 20,000 Jews, 90% of them young ones, gather in front of the Leningrad synagogue, Simchat Torah, the same in Moscow. And they sing Hebrew songs, and they exchange Jewish remarks to one another. Police fences off many streets around. No one is bothered, no one is touched. And then they finish up the gathering with dancing, Israeli dances in the street. This is not a good one. We went out because when we heard about it, and we read, we felt that this might have been an exaggeration. So then I asked a responsible diplomat, I will not mention his country. I said, what can you tell me about this? He said, we took experts to the scene, people who know exactly how many people can stand on a square meter. And they estimated the length of all those streets and the crowd of people. And the conclusion was of our experts that it was in excess of 20,000. But wait, this is not over, this story. These were our first tears in Russia. Then he says to me that this place can be gotten here, and we decided to take a taxi, and cabs were running. So I stopped one. We are about to say goodbye to him. He takes me, he grabs me by my hand, and he keeps it. And he looks me in the eyes, and he says to me in Russian, he says, tell me truthfully before you leave. You are people who believe in God. Do you people believe in your heart that I and my friends will ever get out of here and come to Israel? Tell us the truth. Before you go away, I want to hear it from you. And I want to tell this to my friends. Do you believe that there is such a possibility that we will get out and we too will come to Israel? This was from a 24-year-old young man born much after the revolution. I became astounded. So I looked at him and I said, our religion teaches us that you must have faith and you must have bitachon. If you will have patience, you will see God will help you, and ultimately you and your friends will come to Israel. But just be patient and have hope. Never give up this hope, and you will be with us. My other two friends, they were ashamed. They started crying like children when I translated to them, and I told them what is the demand of this young man. This was our first meeting with a younger Jew in Russia on the streets of Leningrad, on the way to see the sister of the Rosh Hashiva. Now, after this has happened, of course, we felt that this is our opportunity and we may not have it again. So we decided to walk on the streets of Leningrad, there too in Yarmulke, to make it as easy as possible for a Jew to see us and to recognize us who we are. Incidentally, we cannot tell you exactly how, but Jews in Moscow and in Leningrad knew in advance of our coming. And I'll tell you later on how we heard it and from whom we heard it and so forth. But there spread word about it. We also know that the government was out of the way to see that attendance should be excellent in the synagogue. We know how the government did it. Telephone calls were made to people on the dacha. There are certain Jews that go away. It is unbearable, not so much the heat, but the humidity in Moscow, to stay there during the weeks, the months of summer. So they go away to a dacha. You know what a dacha is? A summer place at the suburbs of Moscow. Anyhow, when we walked in Moscow, to the Moscow synagogue Shabbos morning, here and there we meet a Jew, gay and dick, and I will not hide from you with a talent under the hand and so forth. And ihr seid doch die Amerikaner Abonnien? Yes, von wann ihr gewusst habt, wir hatten uns schön aufgerufen, wir hatten uns geheißen kommen daheim. And about 4 or 5 or 6 told us exactly the same story. Wir hatten uns aufgerufen, wir hatten uns gesagt, dass wir sollen kommen. And here they were on the way to shul. Now, it is interesting to note that when you speak to the Russian official or to the Russian intelligentsia, they will show to you great respect for America as a country, as a society. Tremendous respect for our standards of living, our technological development, and everything we do. And incidentally, I believe this was an important change in attitude. The first day I bought the Viestia on the front page. They were reporting about Mariner 4 or 3, I don't remember which one it is anyhow, and they spoke with respect on the front page of the Viestia about the scientists of America in Pasadena and about the great success of this Mariner and what kind of information it will get. I have the article right here with me. And this was a different change of policy. Never before did they praise Americans or things connected with our country in the way they did it now on the front page. But of course, wherever we moved, Vietnam was in our way. To such an extent that Jews in shul, in Leningrad, in Moscow, in Tiflis, I hope I will have time to tell you about Tiflis, which is a terribly important chapter of our experience. They came over to us, Mipul Yorike, elderly Jews. Was hat euer Land zu uns, Amerika? Was tut ihr auch Waffen Bombes auf uns? You hear? Was will the umgesetzt auf uns? What does America want of us? Why does she establish all these bases? What are you doing in Vietnam? Why is it that you want war against us? Look how many the Nazis killed of us. You know that Russia suffered terribly under the war, not less than others, and most likely even more. Do you know that Leningrad, the siege of Leningrad took more than 800 days? Do you know that more than 600,000 people died in Leningrad of famine alone? During this siege, more than 600,000. And when we came up in Leningrad on the cemetery, I have here the picture with me. Of course, I don't think you will see it. So the Rabbi said to us, kommt ich vielleicht beweisen a Kever, wo es liegen über 8.000 Iden, killed from shrapnel and cannon. Of course, we heard such a thing. We were moved and we said, take us over. And the cemetery is huge. And you have to walk, and it was a warm day, but we made our way there. I came over to the place and I took a snapshot of the Matsevo. And I like to read to you what is the inscription of this Matsevo. Вечная слава героям ленинградцам, падшие в борьбе за честь свободы и независимость нашей Родины. They say honor and glory, eternal honor and glory to the heroes of Leningrad. A war Jew is not mentioned. And on a Jewish cemetery who fell in the struggle for the independence of Leningrad, and kindly listen to this expression, Zachet Svobody, for the honor of liberty, of freedom, in Nezavissimos and independence. You hear that they fell for liberty, freedom, and independence. Nache Rozini, for our birthplace, our fatherland, and so forth. And my friends and I, we said to one another, Nezavissimos is Svoboda Pavemet. For whom was that liberty, and for whom was this independence? We called over an elderly Rabbi, a Lubavitcher Chosid with a longer beard, a most wonderful person who gave us important information on the status of the cemetery now, and we asked him to make on behalf of American Jews a Hail Mole at this place. And I said to him, wie kommt das? Fliegen dort auf 10.007. So ich stehe ein jüdischer Wort auf dem Mercedes. So he says, mir hat gemacht am Mercedes und sie gewinnen ungeschrieben mit Jüdisch. Und mir hat das zerbrochen und mir hat zugestellt, not to permit. And now I'm coming into the cemetery phase of Soviet Russian Jewry. I know it is a painful and a distasteful thing, but I think we have to tell it to you. On the Alum, when we walked up and we walked there, long stretches, we could hardly find among the new Mercedes, thousands of them, and we took a count, all of us spread for the last 20 years, any Jewish letter. Not a Jewish letter on a Mercedes. This is number one. Number two, when we were on the cemetery, some Grayson Badoyan, much to our pain, we witnessed 2 funerals. And on the cemetery is a place where you can talk to people a little bit with more comfort than in other places for obvious reasons. So here arrives a Jewish funeral as we are standing. A bus comes and the coffin is in it and the family sits with it. That is the minhag there. And then the second bus with the relatives and more friends. As the people stepped out, we were dressed in the yarmulkes. I was dressed exactly as I am dressed now here, and I see a very interesting face of a man come out. He looks over 60, and as he came out, I come over and I stretch out my hand and I said, we want to express sympathy to you. We are American rabbis, and we came. He said, oh, I heard that there are a group of American rabbis visiting here. And I speak to him in Yiddish. He doesn't answer me a word in Yiddish. Whatever I say in Yiddish, he answers in Russian, but not a word in Yiddish. Then, of course, one of the obvious questions is, who are you and what are you? So I find out he happens to be a surgeon, a chirurg, in a leading clinic of Leningrad. So I said to him, как же здесь живется для евреев? Wie lebt до Juden? Sagt лучше. It is better. Lucha. He didn't say that it's so wonderful. Then I said to him, do you have children? So he said, yes, I have. So I said to him, do you tell them anything about your past as a Jew, your relations, anything? He says, I don't tell them much, but they know it. So I said, how do they know it? He said they know it from our anti-Semites in Leningrad. You hear? From our anti-Semites in Leningrad, they know it. They come across it in their classroom, in their place of occupation. They said, although I did not tell them, but they are telling them. And here I could not help but think of that remark of the brilliant author of Russia who ranks on the very top, perhaps with one more, Ilya Ehrenberg. You know, one of the rabbis asked Ilya Ehrenberg on a previous visit, Ilya Ehrenberg, you are a communist, ideologically you are so far from us, why do you retain your Jewish identity? And he turns to this rabbi and he says, you know, I do not believe in anything. And I have no connections with you people in any way. But one thing I will give you a promise. As long as there will be even one anti-Semite left in this world, I will claim that I am a Jew. That was the answer of Ilya Ehrenberg. You make your own judgment and your own criticism on these things. So he said they are letting them know. Then he says, I do want you to know, although we have those things, but I want you to know that most of the doctors, the staff members and the research people in my clinic, in front of the other rabbis, are Jewish. In spite of these remarks and things, most of them, he says, are Jewish. Now we witnessed a funeral, two of them. One we did not go because we heard that there was no tachrichim and there was no tahare. Incidentally, over 85% of the Jews who are buried in Leningrad and Moscow do not have tachrichim and do not have tahare, because it is physically and otherwise impossible to get it because of government interference. Only some 10% get tachrichim and tahare. Leningrad has about 200 Jewish funerals each month, and 90% or 85 of these do not have the traditional Jewish rituals at this place. Now, there is a danger now that they will lose the right to their own cemetery. And some will ask you, but aren't there more important things for which to bargain with a Kremlin than a Jewish cemetery? You people, whoever says this does not know Jewish history. Hitler knew that the Jewish cemetery is a link of history. It's a depository of Jewish experience and the Jewish past, reminding him perhaps something of the future. Because even as we walked in Leningrad on the cemetery, we saw a number of young people. On the cemetery we saw more young people than we saw in all the synagogues, except for Tiflis. And there a young man, without a hat, without a yarmulke, he stood and he put flowers on the grave of a mother. And he stayed there for a while. And we felt that here was a little bit linked with our people, with his past, with the Jewish mother. It means something. And you know, this was one of the methods of the Nazis to erase Jewish history in Europe, to destroy their cemetery. And now they are in danger of losing the cemetery rights in Leningrad and in Moscow. And when I asked a certain commissar, I said, why can't you do it? And he gave it in his own manner an honest answer. He said, we have an explosion of population. The Nazis have destroyed so much. We are building in the outskirts, which is true. They are building many, many apartment homes. And there are every day over 200 new apartment units built in Leningrad, every day ready now. So he said, we don't have any place. I said, we in America too, we have the same problem. But you can get it 30 kilometers out of the city. He said, this too will be occupied. And Soviet Russia is letting his hands to convert, to transfer now to cremation. We don't want to have any kind of cemetery because of hygienical reasons, because of population reasons. I said, you who occupy a sixth of the dry land of the entire world, you have a problem with land? As we were traveling in the plane, we saw so many fields and so many long stretches of territory which is occupied and not soiled and not served, that you have this problem. And of course, this is a very crucial problem now. And I must tell you that the Moscow chief rabbi was refused. On Friday when we were in Moscow, he went to the minister. It was felt that this would be the proper time for him to go and see Minister Putin, who is the head of religious cults of Russia. He went and he begged him to give some place for a Jewish cemetery, and he was refused. I don't know why he said that the press did not relate this. They did tell the story about the three concessions which were given, but they should have also told of something in honesty which was not given. Now, this is as far as the cemetery is concerned. And we went, for example, to Peter's Palace, 18 kilometers from Leningrad. We had to take in something outside of all of these other religious activities, and please, on the way back, we sat in the bus. Michael was with us, and our group started singing Ani Mamin, Hatikvo, Veshovu Bonim Ligburam, a very moving Hasidic song that the children will ultimately return to their heritage, to their inheritance. And as we were singing, Michael was facing us. You know how the guys sit in those buses in Europe. They have a seat facing the people in the bus. And he was moved. And then I saw him take out a handkerchief, and he was moved again. And listen what Michael did. As he was listening to these songs, and we are coming in now on Leninski Prospect, he turns to me, tell your group, he says to me in Russian, that I remember one song which my grandmother taught me in Yiddish. He couldn't speak Yiddish, hardly a word. And if they want to, I like to sing it for them. So I turn to the group and I tell them Michael is going to surprise us with a song. What do you think that he starts singing? Going from Plitachok, Brenta Fire. And again, I cannot tell you to what extent we were moved when here Michael, the sophisticated communist, of course, highly cultured, but a wonderful man. You just can't imagine. I mean, the Film Telayid. Here we saw that even one who carries that card and that membership and all of this, he could not help it. And then when Hatikva came up, you couldn't imagine what happened with his face, with his eyes and everything. And then quietly later on, he says to me, I understand they are doing quite well there. When I said to him goodbye and I had to leave, he says they are doing quite well. And this was, of course, one of those experiences which are difficult to forget. We come in Moscow synagogue. Are you getting tired? No. We come in the Moscow synagogue. We come in the Moscow synagogue in the morning. The rabbi was not there. He was sitting shiva for his brother on the dacha, but he finished up with shiva later on. He was still on the dacha, and he had to finish it in the morning. So, of course, we could not meet with him in the morning. So we come in. And there is my faithful friend, Rabbi Solmeya Dashalis, with a lang yavod, and with that beautiful face of a patriarch. And this was a day of reading the Torah on Thursday. So, as the Torah, you know, is put together after reading, and he has a moving voice. He begins to sing, and the Medrash was packed with people. In fact, when we came to Leningrad, there were 4 minyanim going on in 4 different areas of the shul. But not younger people. So he started singing a hero, and he gave it with so much heart, may it be the will of our Father who is in heaven, that we receive good tidings of deliverance and comfort. And when he came to Yeshua and Nechomis, he kept on repeating, yes, I would even give you the melody the way he said it, but I don't have the proper instrumentalities for it, or whatever you need. And he kept on repeating, Yeshua is in a homage. But then when he came to the next stage, he moved all of us. As for our brethren, the whole house of Israel, who are handed over to distress, captivity, may God have mercy on them and grant them relief, bringing them from darkness to light, from servitude to liberty, speedily and very soon. And you should have seen how he was looking at us. We were looking at him, and all the Jews in Shul started looking at us, and it is just like going in a jail and people repeating this prayer, take us out of darkness to that which is light and that which is freedom. 3 o'clock in the afternoon, we met with Chief Rabbi Levine in a large room in the synagogue, and on his right sat the Sodom, the Moshe. He came in, so I turned to the host. Sag ich, was ist da reingekommen? Wir wollen doch mit euch reden allein. Wir waren keine Delegate. Sagt Rabbi, ich gefragt. Also hat bei mir gefragt. Sagt he did not ask me, he came in. Of course, my friends were outraged. They were never tried to this kind of business. And they felt that a private audience, a private meeting is a private meeting. And this fellow insisting on sitting there, I am not going to tell you how Torah cats find an answer how to get rid of a motor, even in Moscow. We did get rid of him in about 5-10 minutes, and we entered a conversation with Rabbi Levine. Rabbi Levine does not say and does not do anything which would be contrary to the laws of the Soviet government. He is a rabbi in Moscow, and he cannot apparently do things otherwise. And I will be frank with you, I did something which perhaps I may be sorry later on as I get older for doing it. In one of my own private conversations with him, and we could speak on the street only, I turned to him and I said, Rabbi, ihr seid schon ein Hore, a Ben Shivim, a Yid von über 70. Die ganze jüdische Welt, America, Ausländer, Israel, the entire world, knows that you are the chief rabbi of Moscow. And Russia knows it too, that we know it. And you know and I know that the way things are now, the way your name is known, they would think twice before they would do something to you. Don't you think that now is the time that we have to do what Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai did and what Rabbi Akiva did when he went to Rome to intercede with the Roman emperor, or what other great Tanoim and Rabbonim have done? So he was thinking for a while and he said, alles ist noch nicht geendigt. Es kann sein, sei noch Neues in dich. And then, of course, a day later, the news came. The yeshiva will be reopened, the Mateh. Of course, they did it for our benefit. They knew the delegation is there, and they knew that whatever will happen with us will be flexed within moments to the entire free world. And they announced those three things. But he was courageous enough to tell us that he received a refusal about the cemetery. And I must also say, he encouraged. We got his permission before we went to the ministry. And we said, look, thousands of Jews are coming here to Russia. Business, relatives, tourism, interest, whatever it may be. And they need kosher food. So the minister turns to us and he says, how many Jews is kosher in America? He asked me, how many? There is the scene as one place from that moment, but there was no way out. I had to face him. I said to him, I don't know any statistics at this moment. I don't want to give you dishonest numbers, but I do know that many, many Jews who come here, and I sincerely felt so. It is difficult in argument whether you are free for kosher for an American to eat the borscht of Russia. It's a very difficult thing. So they would welcome kosher food. And to us this is a crucial problem in our negotiations with them, because once a text is established that there is preparation and shchita of kosher food, and a restaurant or a dining room in Metropole or Moscow, Ukraine, or Oktyabrskaya is opened with such facilities, do you know what it means for the entire Jewish population symbolically and even otherwise as far as getting meat, kosher, and so forth? Anyhow, we did not get any satisfaction on this modest, and I should say a very legitimate request. And this request should not be underestimated. It is not much less important than the request for Matzah for Pesach. But as yet, we are waiting for an official answer from Moscow. And by the way, we checked with him, with Rabbi Levin, and we said to him, we are going to ask this. He said, Tuta, Tove Alichem Brocha. You will die in a Folzak. I know that all of you have one question here about the protest, yes or no. How can we help them? I'm coming to it very soon. Now, then we invited him to come to America. We said we felt that here was a moment and opportunity to cut out the isolation between two great Jewish communities, and if the metropole and if the bishop can come to any place he wants to go, why not the chief rabbi of Moscow? So he turns to us and he says, Ich kann euch nicht zusagen, wegen kommen, weil es denkt sich, wie mein Gesundzustand wird sein dann. It depends how my health will be when this will come up, and I beg of you, don't pursue this invitation any further. I only tell you this, it will depend on my health. We went to Moscow in two other synagogues. In both of them, we found services. In one of them, a Rav, a big Talmid Chacham, was saying at last, Rabbi Yaakov Meitzi is his name, I will not give you his family name, about 18 or 19 Jews around said they were in the ages of 55, 60, or 70, and he said that Lav Gemore, as an expert Rosh Yeshiva, would say it in any yeshiva in America or in Israel. Later on, we entered a conversation with this wonderful Rabbi Yaakov Meitzi, saintly person. We found out how he's starving. We found out how all of his 3 sons are going to the university, but thank God, Shemrei Mitzvot, Shemrei Shabbos, and 2 of them, they did not know we are going to be there. They came to Daven Ma'ariv. They came to Daven Ma'ariv in Shul, and I don't have to tell you that all of them, as soon as they found out who we are, they surrounded us, and they asked us about life in America, how Jews are treated here, and are Jews learning Torah, what kind of yeshivas do we have. We found really a wonderful element in this shul. But then as we left the synagogue to get our transportation back to the hotel, one of the elderly Jews said he will escort us, because the shul is really in a courtyard, and this is in a slum area of Moscow where you have those slum houses, and water with pumps is gotten on the street. So as he walks, one of us speaks louder. So he turns around and he says, Ich bete euch, ihr kommt von Amerika, von a freie Land. Red, sing ihr sehr still. I beg of you, speak very softly here. So we said to him, was mit der reden still, why softly? Sagt schon einige Male getroffen haben, wir gehen nach Haus von Schule und wir reden nicht das, taugen uns ohne Goyim und wir schlossen uns. That is, I'm giving you just as it was given to us. So it says many times these neighbors and the others, as we speak Yiddish, they fall upon us and we get our beatings up and so forth. Of course, I do want to say, as I tell you this story, that the government does not encourage such things, the government is embarrassed by such things, and the government would give every police protection that such things should not happen. This must be said to their credit, because these are the facts. But this is also a fact what he told us. Next morning we had a painful confrontation with the champion Moser of Moscow. The champion apologist, we went to the Marina Roshka synagogue, and of course the intourist boss. In America there goes on fights in legislation in the courts whether we can use a bus to bring children to Hillel Academy or to the Achit Mimim, and the government should pay for it. In Moscow I got the government bus with an American flag on top of it to take us in the morning zum Daven und bei Nacht, und der Chauffeur die muss sitzen und glitschen mit den Zähnen und warten in der Dusche until we are going to take us back to the hotel and say, go to geholfen. So next morning we take the bus half past 7 from the hotel, and we go to Marina Roshka synagogue. You heard much about it. This is where the first service for Matzah was given this last Pesach. We come there and we meet wonderful Jews. It is really a martyr Jew, an isolated Jew, but warm-hearted. I wish I could tell you how davening was in this shul. And this was Friday morning. We found in the shul over 80 people davening with a minyan. And we found several younger people. 2 of them saying Kaddish, but they could not read a word of Hebrew. So they improvised for them with Russian letters, the text of the Kaddish, transliterated. Then at the end of the services, a gentleman comes over to us, and we see he is dressed so much better than all the people. All the others, I don't have to tell you how shabby they are dressed. He has a hat, you would think about it on Fifth Avenue in New York, a wonderful suit, very fine shoes, and he looks to be a cultured person, throws in English words when he speaks, and introduces himself, gives the name. We will make a judgment whether his name should be released, because I'll tell you soon what happened with us, with a Moser in Odessa. A tragic thing happened there. Anyhow, this man comes over, and he tells us he's an engineer, and he's the predstavитель of the shul. So the first thing we said to him, we'd like to see your rabbi. Rabbi Alevsky is the rabbi in the shul. Oh, sollt ihr gesund sein, dem Rot, wo gewinnt besser nicht zu stören, Freitag Eretz Shabbos. Du willst doch auch Freitag Eretz Shabbos, wie das schwer zu sein Menschen, und sie erfahren nur Menschen. Sag ich, gib uns eine Adresse, wir uns zugehen, reden mit dem Rot. Sagt sollt ihr gesund sein, ihr darf dem Rot nicht stören. Folgt mir, was ihr wollt wissen, wer ich halt erzählen. what could we do? We had no chance. So he takes us into a room near the synagogue, and then he says, "Ihr wisst, Amerikaner Rabboni, ich habe euch verrieben. You know, American rabbis, I am English." So ich verwusst ihr verrieben. Was du mir getan? Wir sind jetzt da rein. Wir haben noch nicht gehabt, eine Gelegenheit zu tun, es ist nicht gut. Sagt er, ihr wisst nur, die darf Zeichmannen hingehen in Israel, nennt ihr Amerikaner Rabbonim, und ihr schickt da Telegramme zu Präsident Ben-Zvi, und ihr sollen nicht hingehen. Was hat er gesagt, kann ich das hängen, Achmanen? Was darf ihr sich nicht mal da raus, sagt er alles. So I said to him, weißt ihr, und ihr haben geschickt da Telegramme. You know that a certain reformed rabbi from a certain place in America sent such a telegram, not even on behalf of his group. So he takes out this magazine, which he let me have, and he takes out again an article by one of Ergelis Kadeshim, his squire, and there he writes how the American rabbis organized a petition and intercession on behalf of Eichmann. And this is being spread to all the Jews in Russia. That here what rabbis are doing, and this is religion to you. They went out to save Eichmann from the tree. Right away, of course, we gave him a refutation. So he sees, you know, the story of Krylov, Bachnya Krylova, about the wolf and the sheep drinking out the water. So he says, if you did not drink, your father drank, or your mother, or your grandfather. So then he pulls out an envelope. You make trouble. What kind of trouble? Looks, takes out an article which is photostated and sent from a Jewish communist, and we know who he is, in New York, to him. And he photostated two articles. One by a colleague of mine, I will not mention his name, in a Bnei Brit journal. Those of you who are Bnei Brit ought to remember that about 9 months ago you had an article of Soviet Russia with a picture of a shabby, broken down synagogue. And then he takes out mine. Sagt er, was darf es vor der Film nach solche liegen? Ob Mieten gehabt, wo es ist besser wie bei uns? He turns this way. Anyhow, and I don't have to tell you how the other Jews looked at him, and then he tells us, entschuldigt sich, das auch ausfließen, mein Karl, ich werde im Automobil gelogen, und mir hilft er vorn a Sachmaschine. He drives a car too. He's the government apologist and many other adjectives which I do not care to use. Finally, we said to him, we were so outraged the way he was talking and all the lies, misrepresentations, and then how the embassy of Israel is meddling into their affairs and bothering them. So we picked ourselves up and we said, gut, du seid gesund. That the Rabbonim Epshatim, wir aufnehmen morgen in our Gostinitze, perhaps you'll see me tomorrow, Shabbos. So we said, fine. So we made an appointment, and we saw him for about 2 hours. Late in the afternoon, we gave up our Shabbos nap. We came very late from the synagogue. I'll tell you later on, there'll be a chance what was the gist of the conversation. And now let us come to one of the events which was so publicized. It was determined by a subcommittee of the delegation that no matter what happens, we must make an attempt to speak to Russian Jews formally and openly, so that it would be publicized and Russian Jews will know that Jews of America are interested and they are coming to see them. I was delegated to negotiate on this, and first, of course, I met with Rabbi Levin, and I said to him that we would ask for an opportunity to speak Shabbos morning. He looked at me and he said, das wendet sich nicht an mir. No, ihr wisst doch, ich darf fragen bei anderen. You know, this is the government. So he said, gut, fragt. When we came late Friday afternoon in Shul, about an hour before Milche, he asked me to come in with him in privacy to his office, and he said, we are giving you the right to speak. The government said it's all right. But you must remember that none of you are to speak more than 5 minutes. None of you are to speak politics. None of you are to speak but greeting, a regard. And that is all that you can say. So ich was für eine Frage. Wer will da eben andere sagen? And I was thinking, I geht einem dem Schäfer, bloß das ist sowieso. Bei ihm in Moskwa. Anyhow, I said to him, yes, we will do it. Friday night, there were not too many people in the synagogue. There were quite a few tourists, and we came in to eat. And if I would tell you what our meal was, you would understand what kosher shchita is in Moscow and what food is in Moscow. I will not exaggerate. Each one of us received such a piece of meat which was blessed. And only one of us who was courageous to eat it, he was sick all night. And then we had compote after this. It was water with raisins. That was all. Mainly no sympathy for us. We don't look but we were worrying about our people, what they have to eat. At the table, we exchanged Torah, and again the Moser and an assistant Moser came to the table. Even there at the Sabbath meal, they did not leave us alone. When we came Sabbath morning, when we started coming to the synagogue, we saw people, and we recognized Jews coming from different directions. And they came over, they asked us who we are. We come in, the synagogue was really packed. And there was still another minyan going on in a big besmedrash of the shul. And of course, one of the big surprises was when during Kriyat HaTorah, they called up a boy bar mitzvah. A 13-year-old boy was called up for the first time in 16 years, bar mitzvah. And not even maftir, just to make the bracha. All of the Jews, and I will not minimize the impact which we made, but this was not less an impact, perhaps more. They stood up from their seats. Das ich kommt leben. Ein Indel bar mitzvah in Russland in a shul in Moscow. And they left their seats and they were crowding towards the bime. Und einer zum anderen mit Reden, a bar mitzvah, guck a bar mitzvah. They couldn't believe, just as if you would see a man with two heads. And the boy came up, he said nicely the brachos. With the fathers, a religious man working in a factory. They live outside of Moscow. I don't have to tell you what a ration there was in the shul. Of course, there were no flowers, there was no kiddush, there was nothing of that stuff. And we saw the boy next morning with a tefillin, davening in Moscow in shul, with the delegation, of course. This was a very little thing, but a decent thing. We gave him a bar mitzvah matolek of our own. And I don't have to tell you how we were moved by it. So this was as far as the bar mitzvah is concerned. Incidentally, 3 women served us the meal. And Rabbi Levine turns to us and he says, "Hier, weißt du, die 3 Feuer seine?" Sagen wir, wer seien sie? Sagt alle 3 seien gewähnt Goyes mit 3-4 Jahren zurück. So sich Megaier gewesen. They converted. And 2 husbands of theirs are outside there. And both husbands are educated professionals. And the women were going with a tichel, even cough like this, and handing me the food. So I said to the chief rabbi, I said, "Was haben Sie sich mit Geier gewesen?" Sagt das will ich hier so das fragen, ihr habt Rusche. Der Rabbi fragt das bei ihr. Did I help to talk the message, she'll bring you the food, ask her why did she become Jewish. And she brings over the food to me, I turn around to her, and I asked her in Russian, she does not speak Yiddish. I heard from the rabbi such wonderful things about you. And could you tell me, if I'm not personal, what was the reason that you converted into our faith? And this is exactly what she answered. Saturday night, I wrote it down on my notes. So she says to me, "Господин Равин, вам нужно спрашивать, почему до сих пор я не обращалась еврейской религии." So you should rather, I said, "Why did you convert to Judaism?" So she says to me, "You should have rather asked me, why did I wait so long to do it?" And then she started giving me quotations from Daniel, from Isaiah, from Jeremiah. Mir seien nicht Stimmen geworden. And then sagt Rob, dass sie noch nicht genug. Seid ihr sehr gut, dass Poupko nimmt das Zider, ruft ihr zu, so sie euch lehen, ein Artikel von Zider. Nicht du, wo ihr wollt. I take a Zider, we couldn't believe it our own eyes. She comes over, her daughter, her sister, and they read, I will not say in a perfect, flawless, grammatical Hebrew, but they read beautifully. And of course, I do want to come to some important items here. I cannot exaggerate to you what the impact was of this experience. When they took out the Torah, we followed the Torah procession. And when you follow the Torah procession, then the Jews in the synagogue take an opportunity to say a few words to you. First of all, every one of them wants to touch you. Every one of them wants to say to you, B'Shabbat Shalom Aleichem, Adank Fan Kumen. They just push, they want to only you, as if there will be some outstanding personality to touch. And what are some of the remarks which we scribbled down when we came back Saturday night to our rooms? Sagt uns dem Emes, is noch so a Hoffnung oder a Zukunft, which is the Eden. You hear the first question. Is there still any hope or any future for us? Tell us the truth. Nachher, another one. Bet sie sollen uns losen, bleiben Eden und leben in Gott. If the government, they should let us remain Jews and believe in God. Another one. Tut was ihr kommt noch, zu errüstere werden, Gott die unsere Kinder von der dem finsteren Gehenim. Save at least our children from this dark Gehenim. And then another remark. They haben uns feind wie a Spin, aber they halten uns so der Tabot. They hate us on the one hand. Why do they keep us? Why don't they let us go? These are some of the remarks which we heard, and of course, I cannot tell you, I am embarrassed to relate this. They started kissing our hands and our face. Dankheit was your gedenkt uns. Thanks for remembering us and for coming to see us and to find out how we are doing. Two policemen came in suddenly in the synagogue. There was a tremendous crowd, but the Moskverot remarked to me I should not be upset and I should quiet down. I should give peace of mind to my friends. It's nothing, it happens. And a policeman in Russia is not a bad fellow. They came in perhaps to see whether there was order. Of course, there were two government officials in the synagogue. There were the top informers. And to our pain and consternation and our shame, several American Jewish visitors in Moscow, one of them then had the chutzpah, the audacity, to walk in with a sweater in Moscow synagogue with a short sleeve, in a synagogue, take out a camera Shabbat, in Kriyat Torah, and get up in the main aisle as we sit all to take pictures of us as if we were some kind of, especially the Rabbi and we were outraged, such a Chilul Hashem. Immediately we sent one of the officers of the shul to stop him. And of course, we did not have too much COVID from the conduct of some of our tourists. I regret to say it. I wish they would understand that they are coming to people who buy a pair of shoes once in 3 years, a suit once in 5 years. They are dressed shabby, they are poor. And this is not a place to show off with your $10,000 diamond ring, with your big cigar, and with your expensive camera, and with your 20 suits. This is not the place to do it. In fact, we have agreed before we left to be as dressed as modestly and as limited as we possibly could. And even the 4 women in our group, there were 4 relatives with us on the street. So finally, I had an unusual schut, the second time in 14 months to receive maftir in the Moscow synagogue. This was Pinchas, and you all know what a maftir was. I know you all know it. The maftir was, of course, from Yirmiyahu, the first chapter. And although I'm not a chazan and I have no voice for singing, I can hardly make kiddush home with a yidden. I got suddenly some kind of supernatural strength. And I was moved by the occasion so much. Vayimer Hashem Elai al Shem Amaronechi Kelko Asher Eslachachos Telech V'Sko Asher Asafo Tedaber. Jeremiah hesitates to go on his mission of prophecy, and God says, don't hesitate, you must go and you must speak. And then he says, Al Shiro Mipneihem. And I cried this out as loud as I can throughout the shul. Al Shiro Mipneihem. And then I said, Al Shiro Mipneihem. They started clapping in middle, as if it was a speech, not master. Be not afraid of them, for I am with thee to deliver thee. Then the Dibarti Mishpot I ate them, I will utter my judgment against them. Al Teichas Mipneihem, again not to fear. You will be as strong as a fortress for them. And then they will wage war against you. They will never conquer you. And as soon as I finished the master again, they started all clapping, as if I said a speech. The Lord is saying, don't be afraid. You will wage war against them, but you will finally win that struggle. And the master was over, and I walk away after the master. And the rabbi gives me RCA, and then he says again, ich bete euch, Herr Poupko, sagt eure Chaverin, 5 Minuten zu reden, mehr nicht, und viele Politik, wenn ich was rede, ich Cholilo bechad. We told the other two men, the president of the Rabbinical Council of America, to speak, and the senior in age rabbi among us, together with myself, that we are to speak. The rabbi, as soon as we put away they put away the Sefer Torah, and here I should not forget this, the Israeli diplomatic corps was there, about 11 of them in their partition. They are not given even an aliyah. When the ambassador's wife had a child and he wanted to make a mishaberach, in shul, and he begged the Gaboim, give me an aliyah. They refused. He cannot get an aliyah, and he cannot walk in the procession. Of course, you know why? Because many Jews throw in requests and notes and regards and this and that. You know what the state of Israel means for them. This is a chapter by itself. Never will you or I know to the fullest extent what the state of Israel means for those 3 million Jews. Never. I, for one, would say that if the state of Israel was created only to give hope and strength and gedut to those 3 million Jews and many other things which I don't care to discuss now, it would have been justifiable to fight for this state, not 50 years, but 2,000 years. I cannot tell you what this embassy of Israel means to these Jews right there in Moscow or wherever they move, and what kind of people Israel understood to send there. And each one of them outstanding and brilliant, and a heart, a Jewish heart, with all of its ramifications. Do you know what it means for a mapamnik to sit down in a car and put away 50, 60 Esregim and Lulovim and carry them some 500 miles to make sure that even though Hodna Esrik and Alulet. You and I hear other stories about mapamniks and mapai, but what does that mean? What does it mean when a mapamnik or a mapai goes out of the way as far as Masse and other things are concerned, and I spoke already too much and so forth. And these are the people of the state of Israel. And I could tell you more and more of their sacrifice, what they are doing. So anyhow, they sat there on eingeflogen in it. So of course, I as a foreigner, my colleagues, we made our business in front of everybody, and we wanted to make emphasis of it. We walked over with an head to the representative of our state, to all of them. We shook hands with them, and we embraced, and we said good Shabbos to one another, and right away even there the President came over and he asked us, he told us not to bother those people, we should go to our seats, which we did. Then came the droshes. Rabbi Levine gets in the pulpit, and there was the foreign corps, government officials and others. Rabbi Levine says that he greets guests from the Jewish community of America, and he hopes that they are also guests to strengthen peace in the world, harmony between the Soviet Union and the United States. And then he reads off the names of the 3 who will speak, and he introduces one by one. Each one of my colleagues achieved such a degree of eloquence, because sometimes it is the moment, sometimes it is the special occasion which helps you rise and to meet the challenge. And each one of them, when they spoke, I was really moved by it. I could not help, I cried just as the others, and I applauded not less than any of the Russian Jews when my colleagues spoke. I spoke the second, I come in the bime, and they are all surrounded here, and they stood up. They stayed during the time, stood on their feet during the time of the rabbi's speeches. So as I get in, I start off this way. Teile Iden von Moskwe und von Russland. I'm telling you exactly what I said. Ich stehe da jetzt mit gemischten Gefühlen in der Heiligen Schule. I stand here with mixed feelings in this sacred synagogue. And then I tell them how the walls of this synagogue are penetrated with Jewish history and blood and pain and also joy. And then I said there is still another reason why I stand here with these mixed feelings here. Because we, the American delegation, and we Jews of America and Jews of the world are grateful to the Soviet Union for having joined the great democracy of America, our peace-loving country, in voting in 1946 for the establishment of the State of Israel, the greatest, the most sacred, the most meaningful event of Jewish history for 2,000 years. As soon as I said the State of Israel, there was such a pandemonium with the hands and with the feet you can't imagine. And here the rabbi had to come in as I was talking, and he begged on the bime. And he said, I beg of you, you need it. Das ist a Schuh, ihr sollt nicht passen. And of course, he became very uncomfortable. And then I said, there's another reason why I stand here with these mixed emotions. Because I said on this bime stood the historic Rabbi Mother, the chief rabbi of Moscow during the Tsar. On a Rav Maze, I said, with Mesiras Nefesh, with pride and self-sacrifice, defend the Jewish honor and dignity and pride in the courtroom of Kiev in 1914, when the Bailiff's process, the Bailiff's trial took place. And I said he did not care to defy the Tsarist government or the tyrants of his day. He went and he defended the Jews. And because he could do that, we are here with special derech. And there is a flag for Rabbi Mado on the right side of the bime. And my conclusion was about America seeking peace. And then I said, Mayim rabim leyuchlo lechabet es ha'ahavo. Even the greatest, I have the translation here exactly in English, many waters cannot quench love, neither can the floods drown it. And I cried out, I said, Sie keinmal nicht gewinn a Keach und es wird nicht sein in der Welt, was wird aufreißen und aufzählen, einigen von dem Zweiten. Sie noch a Keach nicht auf, that there is no power, no authority, that will separate one Jew from the other. And then I finished, Ato Echot, Ve'Shimcho Echot, O Mike Amcho Yisrael Ge'echot Ba'oret. One God, one people, one Torah, and then I sat down. That was the end. When we finished these speeches, I cannot tell you what happened in the shul. This was the first time in many years that a foreigner was permitted to address the Jews of Russia. We were afraid from the outburst of emotion because the government officials were there, the Muslims were there, police was there. And we ourselves tried to understand it, so we purposely turned around to the Mizrach and we tried to absorb ourselves into Moses and we tried to pretend that we are not noticing what is going on, the entire pandemonium. But when the service was over, it took us about half an hour to go into the chief rabbi's room to eat our Shabbos meal, because they, all of them flocked and they held the hand of the chief, ihr habt uns der Chaie gewesen. And we come out of our cars, two policemen stand, and they offer a salute as if we would be diplomats. And they take us up with flashlights to that gorgeous place of the Israeli embassy. When we came in, everything was ready for Havdalah and Melave Malki. So one of our men made Havdalah with the Israeli stomin and the Israeli wine, and the women of the diplomatic corps, together with the men, joined, and we sang Hamavdil, although she's ein lichtig, and all of these songs. You can't imagine. This was something of poetic justice. In this same city, and again, it's not for the state of Israel. In a time when they are so isolated, and when they go through the terrible tragedy, you have this on Yasnyanskaya Street, which is a reminder. Of course, we could speak to one another in this building only when other people were singing. Only when the others were singing loud, then we could converse and discuss things with one another. Some of you may get tired and you may have to walk out, so before I tell you about Tiflis or Kiev, I want to tell you this. Although I was much opposed to public demonstrations and to harsh criticism, which I still oppose, but one thing is certain. Soviet Russia is terribly sensitive to world opinion. And even if this speaks against my own theory, I must tell you what a very responsible person said to me in a city in Moscow. Ein Kind weiß nicht die Mama, dass sie hungrig. If a child does not cry, the mother does not know that it is hungry and needs food. And therefore, in addition to tactful and prudent and dignified negotiations and pleas, we must resort to balanced and sober and balanced methods which will keep this problem of 3 million Jews on the arena of international conscience. It should be done, however, with a sense of responsibility. Nusach, Dr. Goldman. Dr. Goldman is not against demonstrations. Neither am I against them, but I am against excessive use of Zidlereien and accusations and exaggerations which provoke enmity but will not gain sympathy for our cause. The way we have seen Russian jury now, we are convinced that there is a Haley. He's critically ill. We need him and they need us. We cannot afford a single day to pass by in the free world without talking about 3 million Jews of Soviet Russia. But we have to know who should be the Shliach Tzibur, what kind of a nusach. Even when we go up to Washington, whether it's a vigil or this or that, it has to be done most carefully and cautiously, convincing the Kremlin that we are not part of the Cold War. Convincing, as we told them, courageously. I said to students, oh, I left this out and time is running out, but perhaps the other part you'll read the article. When we went to Moscow University, hundreds of students surrounded us. And right away they started asking, what are you doing in Vietnam? What is it your business to kill men, women, and children? And I don't have to tell you that even our local TV stations carried certain stories which were not always the best credit to our armed forces. And we turned to them and we told them courageously, even as police should. We said we were not the first to come there. First you went, you infiltrated. First you went and you caused trouble. It is just, I said to them openly, as a fellow who sets fire to a house and then he gets angry for the fire people coming to extinguish the fire. I said, we have to extinguish a fire there. And we said to them, our country does not want colonies and possessions, and we are not imperialists. We only want to give an opportunity to maximum people in maximum places of the world to have freedom and liberty and human decency. That is what we want. We don't want any war. We discussed it so much, to such an extent that the State Department and the embassy sent us letters, and they said, we want you to know, Rabbi, that although you did not come as diplomats or as ambassadors, you came for a religious cause, but you have served the cause of America not less eloquently than your own cause of the Jewish religion. In the Moscow University, we had a little luck. First of all, this is a most magnificent building, 40,000 rooms. So when you enter this building when you are 1 day old and you want to go through all of these rooms, you come out when you're about 75, if you spend so many minutes in each room. Anyhow, this is the most magnificent building. I cannot tell you about the beauty inside, and the classrooms and the dormitories and the lecture halls, and so many Africans, the Lamumba School and the Lashmumba School and all of these. We worked with our yarmulkes, and then we got in touch with quite a few Jewish students. What did we find out? People came and told us a story that they are so dead, it's finished, they are assimilated, they are no longer part of us. Nothing of this kind. There is a innocent funk in the heart of each one of them. One of those students said, and I believe I said it to a few of you before, he said to me, of course there is some discrimination, there's some anti-Semitism, you cannot get admitted to the university such week if you are a Jew, on the passport it says that you are a Jew, this and that, but he said, don't forget that in the physics department in our university, close to 90% of the professors and research leaders are Jews, and the same in the mathematics department. So I said to him, how can you explain this? You tell me that there is discrimination, they cannot advance and all of this, and you tell me so many Jews are teachers and professors. So he turns to me, guckt herum, he says, can you compare their goyische Kett to unsere jüdische Kett? A kid who was born in Moscow. I know that ADL Brit wouldn't like this answer, but I have to give it to you as a boy in Moscow said it to me. A boy who most likely never succeeded, never saw a Siddur or a Chumash or a Jewish history, but he knew as a Siddur a Yiddish Kop. And if he knows that there is a Yiddish Kop, he will also know that there is a Jewish heart and a Jewish hand. Now, time does not permit me to tell you the reactions even of a half-Jew. The mother is Goyish, the father is Jewish, and with what interest they speak of the state of Israel, with what pride. So one of the students volunteered to take us into the library, one of the libraries. He says, come here, I'll show you something which you will like. He takes out Hebrew magazines, mathematics, chemistry, physics. He says, we're using these for research from the Hebrew University, from Technion, and the others. You will love to see it. Then he shows to me, to my great surprise, my old Scripta Mathematica of Yeshiva University, that internationally known mathematics journal on the graduate research standards. In Moscow University and other places, we found out that even the youth who never entered a cheder, a Sunday school, a religious school, there is identification, there is a spark, and unquestionably, there is a hope of bringing them back to us. There's no question about it. The only thing is, we must be hopeful. I do like to say my report would never be complete. You read in the papers, our story was told throughout the world and everything. But I believe there are some people who have done more than we did, and no one knows about it. And this is a tremendous group. And obvious reasons don't permit me to tell what they are doing and how they are doing. But when the competent and objective chronicler of Jewish history will write a chapter of what Lubavitcher Chassidim are doing and what the Lubavitcher Rabbi is doing, this will be one of the most fantastic tales in the history of this terrible chapter. I will not forget the two Chassidim, elegant millionaires from Milan, where Rabbi Posner's son-in-law is the rabbi. And they too came to buy furs. Many Jews come to buy furs, but some come only for their commercial needs, and others remember that there are Jews in Russia. And you imagine what happens if they remember it. What is being done and how would be a most terrible thing to discuss here right now. But I do say that their dedication, their resourcefulness, their steadfast mesiras nefesh, what they are doing, I cannot tell you because this was an unusual meeting at the airport in Leningrad at the Sheremetyevo, where we met with these merchants, and we discussed, and I wish that the day will come in our lifetime when we'll be able to tell you everything. These people don't get any credit. You never see a story about them in a newspaper or anything. What did we do after all? I got up, I spoke 5 minutes. Here I spoke an hour and a half. Do I deserve credit for it or anything of this kind? But anyhow, I want you to know what the Rebbe. So my thinking, there is no man in the world, and no exaggeration, who understands so profoundly, so brilliantly, so wisely, and so inclusively this tragedy and an approach to it as the great Lubavitcher Rebbe Shlipa. And what they are doing, there's something, and this is not from a Chassid. Now remember, I am not a Chassid, you know that. And this is the truth, and I believe people must know this. I like to conclude with two facts. I don't want to tell you just a bad story. We came in the fleet. Give me 5 minutes, and that is all. Now you'll ask questions. We came to the fleet, which is in the Caucasian mountains. To me, this region meant so much because as a boy I studied Pushkin's Kafkas for the Noyu Adinu B'Shilye, one of the most beautiful poems Pushkin ever wrote. And even as our plane was descending upon the fleet, we saw those gorgeous, fantastic Caucasian mountains, the highest peak of the entire European continent. And in the fleet, we came, I'll say it briefly, we came into the synagogue, I want to tell you the day exactly. Yeah, it was a Monday morning. Yeah, delaying the tailor. This is how I know it was Monday. We come in. Would you believe it that on an ordinary working day, we found a text-based address which is 2/3 of this size, and a synagogue upstairs a little larger than this room. Packed. Wait. Und wir gesagt, dass Kabbalah Study für uns Amerikaner Rabbis. Wait. And younger people. Many boys. We come over to the boys. These are Sephardic Jews, the Bukhari. They do not speak either. So we spoke to them Hebrew and Russian. Several of the boys I called over in front of my college, and they said Shmene Esrei, Kriyat Shema by heart. 8, 9-year-olds. You hear? Shmene Esrei, and we're not afraid. I forgot to tell you, in Moscow, the daughter of a friend of mine, who perhaps will be in Israel in about 4, 5 weeks, 9 years old, he teaches her, and I don't have to tell you what this family went through. They live in one room, he got to that. So I said to him, Ochele, Konstleien en Yiddish, Konstleien en Yiddish, Macht mit dem Kopf, and then I start speaking Russian, and I ask her the same question. So the mother turns to her, to the daughter, and says, don't be afraid of him. You can tell him that you can. Don't be afraid. So she says yes. So I take a seat, and she read a little bit Hebrew. Here in the place we come, many Jewish boys, many young people with polished and skilled women and talented. You would think it was in keeper. So we thought that this was for our benefit. We come in the evening to meet that wonderful Chacham Emmanuel Ben David. Again, a big crowd, tremendous. Then, just I reminded myself in my childhood days when the children used to carry for mother a chicken to the sheikhet. On the main street of Tiflis, we saw at least 15 or 20 of them carrying them free, staying in line to see the sheikhet, Eichet Elubavitch Chosis. I have a picture of him. We took together with a group with the sheikhet, Badar Abed, the estate. And then they showed to us the mikveh in the city. And it's entirely there. They are very skeptic. You'll ask me the difference. Soviet Russia. But don't forget that other Jews came to Russia only 800 years ago. But the Jews of Caucasia, they came over 2,500 years ago. They have a tremendous tradition. They are very loyal. There are such about 60 to 80,000 in the state of Georgia and other places of Caucasia. Do you know what happened? Some of these Jews, we know it. The government said they are going to tear down a synagogue. They have to build a road. So men, women, and children went with that ungulate out of the road. And they said, go ahead, do it, but right over us, over our body. And of course, they went back. The synagogue is still there, and this was a lesson for some of the others. We saw a wonderful picture, but don't get a misconception. It is not a Gan Eden. You cannot have a Talmud Torah or a yeshiva there. Only the father can teach the child. And then when we had a press conference in Tiflis, and I turned to the council and to the editor of the Gruzinskaya Gazeta, and I said to him, why don't you permit, by the way, they have excellent relations, the Goyim with the Eden there, the Jews with the Georgians, and they saved many of them during the Hitler assault. So I said to him, I was asked to as by my colleagues, why don't you permit opening schools to teach religion? After all, you have a wonderful relationship. He says, our youth has no time for religion. They have to learn science and literature. They have to prepare for a career and how to serve the state of it. So we turned to him and I said, look, here we are rabbis. Still and all, we had enough time to go to college and get college degrees. If a person wants to, he can achieve both. And then he said to me, how do you like Soviet Russia? We went on in a very interesting discussion. And then, of course, again, he brought up who killed Kennedy. I forgot to tell you, as we were sitting in the Kremlin talking to the Commissar turned to me and he said, you know, 2 things the world will never know. I said, what are they? The school which Khrushchev ever attended, if he did, and who killed Kennedy. These 2 things, he said, will never be known. So I was happy to hear a joke on Khrushchev, to hear it in the walls of the Kremlin. In Kiev, when we came into the shul, in Kiev to the shul, a notorious Mossad, whom Jews will never forgive. And another one comes over to me and he says, If you then are the Elam like nicht Shepener, I don't want the people to bother you. You're American rabbis. You come right with me and I'll show you where to sit down. So I turned to him and my friends. Wir sind gekommen in Israel, Rabbi. Wir wollen sehen unsere Brüder. Und hier kommt uns Unterpreisung zu sehen. Und ist unsere Amerikaner Passporten und eine Regierung hat uns gegeben, Rechtsschutzerlebnis. Vor und reden, wie wir wollen. Sagt ihr zersetzen, wo wir heißen euch sitzen. Now, the doctrine of this in now, this language I understood. Anyhow, I go with him in Israel, and I indulge him in a conversation, and our men dispersed over the synagogue. We looked for relatives, my own white-haired relatives, and we tried to trace them. And suddenly an elderly man comes over to me. He comes close to my direction. And he says, "Have you heard that you sucht a Makoret, Tversky, Chernobyl? Ich bin a Tversky und ich bin der Chernobyl Reben Sazum." Eingebeten, you know. As he comes over, this mother grabs him and pushes him and he falls on the floor. I turned to this mother and I said, "Look, ich meine nicht, dass ihr will ich so 10 zurufen, dass er dann eben zu mir. Und 10 noch mir auch nicht auch ich bin doch von Schul." So he called over, he apologized. Sagt er, wer dafür soll da das kommen? Bei uns ist doch gut. Was dafür, der Amerikaner eben mischen bei uns? You should have seen which was hatred, which was disdain, which was fear and trepidation. All the other Jews in the shul looked at this man, and what a despicable face. This thing made us so sick that we went and we were sitting till 2 in the morning in our hotel looking at the mountains of Caucasia, speaking about this experience with the Moser. But I do want to say when we left the police, we walked out of the shul and police had to hold order. Over 2,000 Jews gathered. They surrounded us. Matai Ovei Moshiach. Tell us when comes Moshiach. When are we going to Israel? And they danced and they sang and they cried and they kissed us on the hand. You can't imagine the sin. Our bus could not move out. We were surrounded. And police had to come and break it up. And in Kiev, in spite of the Moser, Jewish children ran over to us. And elderly men and others. And they did not let us even go into the bus. Steht noch a minute. Red mit uns noch a Weile. Now these are the reactions in a outline form. And I like to conclude before the questions. Russian jury says to us, Lo amus, I will not die. Ki echye, I want to live. Vasapeir vaseiko. Together with you, I will tell God's wondrous story and tale to this and to many generations to come. Thank you. Are there any questions? Those who want to ask questions. Those who are remaining, kindly be seated. Those who have to leave, gute Nacht. I forgot your name. Chazan Taubi of Beit Sholem is asking the question, what about Chazonus in Russia? I am happy he asked this. Can we have a little bit order? I am happy he asked this question. One of the things which gives chiyas to Jews in Odessa, Kiev, Leningrad, and Moscow is fortunately the fact that there are still some competent and very talented Chazonim left. We finished davening in Moscow in Shul because this Chazon davened, and a tremendous talent. We finished davening 1:30, and no one complained. No one got up from the seat. He gave many renditions, and something else, the Chazon in Moscow, in Leningrad, which I forgot, I had to call his brother in Brooklyn, was so nice. We came to the shul on a weekday, and Lekovenat, he gave a mari, which we will long remember. In Odessa, Jews get together, they elect the copies. You know, Russian Jews have always liked Chazonim, good Chazonim especially. And they bring down, they interchange Chazonim from Odessa to Kiev, from Kiev to Odessa, from Leningrad, even from Vilnius. In Ungarn, we were in Budapest. We heard a chazan which was just out of the world. And this, you don't know what it means for them. They are sad. They are emancipated. No Jewish paper, no Jewish book, nothing of this kind. And here in Shul, they have a chance to hear something of the Jewish neshama. And this, I'm very happy you have this question. Any other questions? Yes. Cousin Zemsky. The Negro question, yes. Yes. It came up, Mr. Zemsky is asking, friends, I spoke for over 20 minutes and my throat is a little bit afflicted. One moment. Now I can't... Mr. Zemsky asked the question about the Negro situation in America, how the Russians react. This question came up constantly to us. We called it the twins, Vietnam and the Negro problem. And I don't have to tell you we had a good answer, a proud answer. Our forthright legislation, the dynamic and sincere leadership of President Johnson, which has almost revolutionized the status of the Negro as far as voting, job opportunity, as far as residence, and we believe that our government made tremendous strides, and we said our government openly admits that there is a problem and is doing something about it. You have a Jewish problem, what are you doing about it? We asked them. And therefore we had an answer. They asked this question. But I believe as Americans, we have a fine, respectable, and honest answer to give nowadays on this problem, because we know it is getting better and better and south. Any other questions?
How about Budapest?
Well, Budapest in Hungary, Mr. Schiffman, in Hungary, the situation is entirely different from Russia. First of all, they hate Russia. Since the revolt, 1951. If you speak Russian there, you are branded. You cannot get even a drink of water. So my Russian didn't do me much good there. In Budapest, we came into the synagogue. We saw children in the synagogue. That is important. We pay it. In Budapest today, there's a Jewish kosher restaurant, which you do not have in Pittsburgh. We ate in this restaurant under the red flag and under the communists, a glass kosher restaurant. In Budapest, about 16 synagogues are functioning. There's a small yeshiva with about 50 children. There is a central Talmud Torah with 132 children. There is a flourishing Jewish life as much as possible and much more freedom. And the government helps financially to support the synagogue, the rabbis, the shoftim, and even kosher meat. And we did not have to ask anyone permission to speak in Budapest. The rabbis invited us, and I gave myself a big drush in Budapest. You know, in Budapest they daven 7:30, then they go to eat 9:30 or 10, and then they come back to hear them Rosh Droshe 11:30. And we have a packed synagogue. The synagogue has 2 floors of balconies for the women, and they don't complain. You know how high they are? About 3 stories high. And according to the Chassam Sefer, you cannot see anyone on the Bible shul. And we met there Balevatim Ungarische Eden London, and we met there a replica of the classical, dynamic Jewish community system and organization, Kehillah, as it used to be in olden days. There are now in Budapest some 60,000 Jews, in Hungary altogether 100,000. They need American rabbis. They don't have enough of their own. They need American shoftim. And the same thing goes for Romania. And this was one of our arguments to the Kremlin. Here you have a communist state, Hungary, and they do not find any inconsistency between permitting religion to function and between their communist states. Yes? I hope no one else understood me this way. No, what I said is this, that there is slight, I want to underscore, slight relaxation that a permit was given for yeshiva for Matan Sidurim. But please remember that if a sovereign state can back out on its obligation to the international community brazenly in the United Nations and not pay its financial debt, and if a sovereign state can break the word to another sovereign state, certainly when Mayim Batlonim comes to the Kremlin and you make promises to them, there too there can be an element of backing out. And I, for one, for example, belonged in that school of thought which advocated not to tell the world about those three things. However, I was given to understand that I was wrong, and I say I was wrong. Other people, Americans and others, and don't ask me who the other are, they said, please announce it to the world as soon as possible, because the more people and the more countries will know about it, the more difficult it will be to back out of it. So right away, let's have it to the entire world in news. And then, but only then, we made this announcement to the New York Times and the Associated Press, which came to see us. Yes.